Everybody be ready to be confused because we're talking about new NFL rules and the controversy surrounding them.
By Thielen, 50, 40, 30, and it's loose!
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to Skull Network, and as I said in the clip before the intro, we're going to be talking about something that usually would seem pretty boring. We're going to be talking about some of the new rules in the NFL, mostly from like the last 5 or 6 years or so, maybe a little farther back, and kind of how they're affecting the game. But more importantly, we're going to be looking at a recent picture that surfaced of Andrew Sendejo wearing a hat that said "Make Football Violent Again," and we're going to talk about kind of how everyone is reacting to that. I'm also going to give my my thoughts. So we're going to start with talking about Andrew Sendejo and the hat that he wore, because it is basically kind of what has started this entire controversy, and more recently this talk about player safety and these rule changes, and like, are they really good for the game? So for those of you who don't know, Andrew Sendejo is a strong safety for the Minnesota Vikings. Clearly I would know that. And he was seen, I don't remember exactly where it was, but he was recently seen wearing a hat. He was wearing it backwards, and someone shot from behind him a picture, and it said "Make Football Violent Again." Obviously that's playing off of the Trump hat saying "Make America Great Again." So it's kind of him saying that he wants to stop softening the league, and he wants to let players play how he thinks football should be played. And trust me, watching him play, he's a very, very, I don't want to say violent, but we could say hard-nosed football player, and it definitely shows on the field if you roll this clip.
Pass fires right, caught by former Viking Mike Wallace, and the ball was jarred loose. Wallace is down on the field at about the 45, hit by Andrew Sendejo.
He's a tough guy. Now, obviously, something like this is gonna, get a lot of reactions, whether they be positive or negative, whether they agree with him or they disagree with him. And if you go on Twitter and just kind of look for this kind of stuff on this topic, there's a ton of stuff. I'll put some of the stuff on the screen right now, but it's just garnering a lot of attention, and it's really big right now. Now, as a majority of football fans know, the NFL over the past decade or so, and even farther back than that, has been throwing in a lot of new rules every year, not only to make the game flow better and make things more clear, like the catch rule, but player safety has especially been something that has been a big concern for the NFL because of brain and head injuries from players getting concussions and all that, blows to the head, and it's costing the NFL hundreds of millions of dollars in trying to compensate for what happened to these players. So they've been throwing in tons of rules to try and make the game safer. I put the word safer in quotes because some of the rules, yes, they do make the game safer. They're trying to eliminate headshots. Players like Vontaze Burfict probably don't like this idea. Players like Ndamukong Suh probably don't like this idea. I might even say that Andrew Sendejo probably doesn't like this idea. Maybe that's why he wore the hat. But regardless, some of these rules are making the game safer, but in my opinion, some of these rules are just plain stupid. Now, as I said, I agree with some of the rule changes that have been happening as of recent. Things like, not leading with the crown of your helmet, or, not going into the head or neck area of players. And in most cases, I get the defenseless player rule. But there's just some things that they're calling safe rules that don't really make a lot of sense to me. Because sometimes what they're trying to call safe really just makes the game less interesting, and in most cases won't even protect a lot of players a whole lot more. Mainly rules that are involving the kickoff that have been added the last few years. I think in 2011 they made it so it's only a 5-yard run-up for players on the kicking team instead of a 15 to 20-yard run-up. And now this year they reduced that down to no more than 1 yard run-up. Like, they can't be more than a yard off the ball. And they tested that in the Hall of Fame game, and I mean, you didn't really see much of a difference. And moving the kickoff back and forth throughout the years, just trying to make it so players won't run the ball out more, it's just kind of ruining things in a way. And other rules like, stopping peel back blocks and chop blocks, I get that in most cases as well. And, trying to protect the knees and below of the quarterback, because obviously that's the most important part of your team. But I'm pretty sure one of the rules that I read said, like, even if you're pushed into the quarterback, that is still not okay. Correct me if I'm wrong. I might correct myself while I'm editing this, but I'm pretty sure I read that somewhere. So some blocking rules I get, you just don't hit someone from below and above. That can really wreck things. But, you know, as someone who, I'm going to put my own personal experience into this, as someone who played football as an offensive lineman for 7 years, things like blindside blocks, I like to call them, where, you know, the person's running this way and you're coming this way, but they're more focused on the ball carrier, and you come in and you hit them when they're not expecting it. That was one of the best feelings, I think, in all of football. And, you know, players make those kind of hits all the time. Some of them much worse than others. If you look at the one that, what was it, Juju Smith Schuster put on Vontaze Burfict last year, oh, that one might be a little excessive. But going into a college football game, it was Kenny Bell from Nebraska on a Wisconsin player. There are just some times where, you know, that player's running for the ball carrier and you're going the other way. You're not just going to stop and let him continue to try and chase him and possibly, you know, get the ball carrier. You have to do something. So yeah, rules like that, eliminating those kind of blocks and other things that are making the game more safe, it's really just taking away multiple elements of the game. So in a way, I think that, you know, a guy like Andrew Sendejo is right to some extent. When he wants to say he wants to make football violent again, he's trying to basically go back to the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, basically, when, you know, there was little to no padding, just little to no rules at all, when, you know, you could hit someone anywhere, and they don't care at all. Like I said in the beginning, you know, head injuries are becoming more and more common, and so eliminating stuff like that is completely fine by me, but just some rules that they're implementing have been getting really ridiculous. So for a decent amount of cases, I'm going to agree with Andrew Sendejo, but also in a few, you know, mainly involving shots to the head and stuff like that, and most defenseless players kind of situations, I'm going to disagree with him. But I think that a lot of these rule changes are a part of the NFL ratings dropping. Now, you would think it's just because of all these protests and stuff, but I do think that, you know, part of it is them changing the rules so much. People are less interested in the game because it's less exciting, because players are becoming able to do less and less and less, and that's just not what the game was originally made for. It was, you know, made for, you know, big guys hitting each other at full speed, and now, like, you're 1 yard off the ball on a kickoff, so, like, what's the point of even having it? And it all just boggles my mind sometimes. So, in conclusion, is Andrew Sendejo in the right or is he in the wrong? That's up to your own personal interpretation. For me, it's kind of 50-50. It depends on what he means. He hasn't come out and talked more about it, hasn't gone on Twitter, hasn't talked to the press, hasn't even been asked by the press. So maybe it's not as big of an issue as we think, but I mean, it's clearly big enough of an issue for rule changes to be implemented. So, I mean, I've given you my thoughts. If you guys have your own thoughts, let me know down in the comments, because it's definitely an interesting issue because of, like, how it's affecting the league. But aside from that, I hope you guys all did enjoy the video. If you did like what you saw, then make sure to drop a like on the video. As I said before, if you have your own thoughts on this, let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't already, if you're new to the channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We got more stuff coming up. With the preseason coming up, we're going to be going over, you know, all those games. I'm planning on going to the game against the Jaguars, so maybe we'll have a little something for that. But aside from that, I'll see you guys all in the next one.